Shalom everyone, and welcome to another live stream. Last week we discussed the oral law, the oral Torah. In last week's video we mentioned that you don't actually get any allot, any laws from the Talmud. The Talmud is used to expand upon laws, and there's obviously laws contained in the oral law, but it takes verses from the Torah, and that is how we get halacha. So today we're going to discuss where the mitzvot, where does the commandments come from. So many of you have already heard about the commandments. It's very popular. So most of you would know that there is 613 commandments in the Torah, meaning the 5 books of Moshe, of Moses. But very few people actually know where this comes from. So the source for it is in the Talmud, which is Makoth 23b, and it just basically says there that there is 613 mitzvot in total. 248 is positive commandments, meaning you shall do. And the 248 positive commandments is connected to the organs in the body. And then there is 365 negative commandments, meaning you shall not do. And that is related to each day of the year of the solar calendar, because there's 365 days in a solar year connected with the sun. Now what we're going to discuss in this mitzvot section is some of the things that you need to know about the mitzvot. Is, like many other things in Judaism, it is a machloket. So how exactly the mitzvot is counted, and what is a mitzvah and what is not a mitzvah. The word mitzvah means commanded, so a commandment. So we need something that tells us that we need to do something, which is from the Torah. And there's a few popular works that we will discuss, and I will also show you in this live stream. But let's start with the most popular work, which is the Rambam. Now, he wrote it in the beginning of his first book of the Mishneh Torah. The Mishneh Torah means the second Torah, which is this book, and we've covered it before. It's Sefer Hamadah, which is the very first book of the Mishneh Torah. And right in the beginning of the book, he discusses the mitzvot. So he lists all the mitzvot, the 613 mitzvot, the 248 positive commandments, the 365 negative commandments, as well as the rabbinical commandments. And we'll get to that in a short while. What is the rabbinical commandments? He actually wrote a book which is called Sefer Mitzvot. All the books that I mention in the stream I will pop down below, so you can have a look there. So this is the book that he wrote, the book of Mitzvot, Sefer HaMitzvot. You can see it there, book of Mitzvot, Sefer HaMitzvot. And in this book, he goes in a lot more detail of each mitzvah. So the way the Mishneh Torah works is he first lists the Rambam Maimonides, who lived 1,000 years ago, originally from Spain, lived most of his life in Egypt as the head doctor of the king of that time. He lists the mitzvot, and then he discusses it in sections, and he breaks it up according to categories. That's the way he does it in Mishneh Torah. So the Mishneh Torah is very much the 630 mitzvot broken down in different categories. But in his book, Sefer HaMitzvot, the Book of Commandments, he goes into a lot more detail, and we will discuss that a little bit today, because today the Rambam's Sefer HaMitzvot is by far the most popular work around, and there was other works before that. There was a work called allot, which means the big laws. And the Rambam actually in his book Sefer HaMitzvot attacks this previous work quite aggressively without mentioning the name of the author of this allot. And that just also teaches us a few things, but it teaches us that you shouldn't slander someone in public or mention his name if you disagree with him in something in Judaism. Another popular work for the mitzvot that lists the 613 mitzvot is Sefer HaChinuch. Sefer HaChinuch means Sefer is a book, Ha is the, Chinuch is education. The book of education, basically. And it lists the 613 mitzvot. It's authored, it was first published in Spain in the year 1200 of the Common Era, so 800 years ago. And no one is 100% sure who the author of this book is. Most people agree that the book was written by someone that was giving it over to his son for his bar mitzvah. And it goes in quite a lot of detail, and what Sefer HaChinuch tries to do is give reasons for the mitzvot, where the Rambam stays away from reasons for the mitzvot. So that's important to know, because those are the two biggest works that you will ever hear about of the 613 mitzvot. Now, as I said, the Rambam in his book Sefer HaMitzvot, he lists 14 principles of how he got to the 613 mitzvot. 248 positive and 265 negative. And I'm going to read it to you because I think it's important to know. And he does elaborate later on, so we're not going to elaborate, otherwise we're never going to finish. So I'll read it quickly, and it will make a lot of things clearer to you. So in his introduction to the book, like I said, he attacks heavily the previous work, which was called allot. And is basically saying that the previous work listed commandments from Nach, from the Nevi'im and Ketuvim, which we discussed in the previous two classes, which I will list above. And the Rambam makes it clear that it can only be a commandment, one of the 613 commandments of the Torah, if it was actually found in the Torah. So allot lists, for example, the reading of the Megillah, which we do in Purim, which happened after the Torah was received, and fasting on Tisha B'Av, which we are going to do this Sunday, Yom HaRishon, right after Shabbos, the fast starts, and everyone fasting should have Tzom Kal, an easy fast, B'ezrat Hashem. And that's also one of the mitzvot that the allot lists as a mitzvah. But the Rambam attacks this aggressively, and if you've ever studied the Rambam, the Mishnah Torah, he doesn't play around with words. He's very aggressive and very to the point when he disagrees. But what I do want to mention is he never ever mentions the author's name. which I think is something that many online speakers can learn from. So let's run through his 14 principles, how he got to the mitzvot. His very first principles is not to enumerate mitzvot which are mitzvot of the rabbis, meaning that he is not listing in the 613 mitzvot any mitzvah contained in the Talmud or by the sages. His second principle, not all that we derive through one of the 13 rules by which the Torah is expounded, or through ribui, superfluous element, is to be enumerated. And we are going to cover the 13 principles, how the Torah, how laws are extracted from the Torah a little bit later. The third principle is not to enumerate those mitzvot which do not obtain for all the generations. The translation here is a bit poor here, but basically he's not listing any mitzvot which does not apply for all generations. Certain mitzvot that's mentioned in the Torah says explicitly it is for that generation. So he's not going to list that as one of the 613 mitzvot. The fourth principle, not to enumerate commandments that relate to all the mitzvot of the Torah as a whole. So broader mitzvot he is not listing under the 613. The fifth principle, the reason for a mitzvah is not to be enumerated as a mitzvah in itself, because some of the previous works use reasons for the mitzvot, which the Rambam is heavily against, as a mitzvah, which obviously he strongly disagreed with. And I do want to emphasize here that the Rambam Sefer HaMitzvot is accepted by the majority. And in Judaism, we always go by the majority. So his work is by far the most authoritative. The sixth principle, a mitzvah composed of a positive and a negative commandment, meaning like Shabbos, you shall keep Shabbos, and you shall not break Shabbos. It has both a positive element, you shall keep, and you shall not break, a negative commandment. The former is to be numbered, meaning the positive commandment. He's saying the former is to be listed, the positive, and the later with a negative. So he's going to take, let's say, Shabbos, shall keep Shabbos as one, and you shall not break Shabbos as another one in the negative. The seventh principle, not to enumerate the halachic details of the mitzvah. So he's just going to list the mitzvah, and he's not going to go through all the halachot of that particular mitzvah, all the laws of that mitzvah. His eighth principle, negations are not to be enumerated among the negative commandments. The ninth principle, not to enumerate the negative and positive commandments themselves, but what we are exhorted against doing and commanded to do. So basically he's saying keeping it sweet and short. The 10th principle, not to enumerate the introduction to a particular end. Number 11, the parts of a mitzvah are not to be enumerated individually if they comprise a single mitzvah. So basically not to break down a mitzvah into more mitzvot. The 12th principle, not to enumerate every detail of an act which are commanded to perform. Again, he's trying to keep it brief in the Sefer HaMitzvot and not make it too lengthy. The 13th principle, the number of the mitzvot does not correspond to the number of days on which a certain mitzvah obtains. The 14th principle, which is his last principle, how to count the implementation of punishments as positive commandments. So that is basically his 14 principles in very short, in very brief. Like I said, I will list the book below. It's very interesting. But there is more modern works. I think that's probably going to be the next section. Yes. So there is more modern works. So one of the most famous is the Chafetz Chaim's book, which is this one, the concise book of Mitzvot from the Chafetz Chaim. And basically what he does is he took all the mitzvot from the Rambam, from Sefer HaMitzvot, from the Rambam, and he listed only the mitzvot that apply today in our times. Because a lot of the 613 mitzvot has to do with the temple service, with sacrifice, which currently is not applicable. B'ezrat Hashem, please God, the temple should be rebuilt. And very soon we're going into Tisha B'Av, where we mourn the destruction of the temple. And please God, the temple should be rebuilt, and we should be able to keep all the 613 mitzvot. And I'll tell you why even that is not possible, even if the temple is rebuilt. There's certain mitzvot that only apply to a king. Now, I'm not a king. Most of you watching is also not a king. Some of them only apply to the Kohanim. I'm Israel because I'm a convert, I'm not a Kohen. Some apply to Levi, I'm not a Levi. And a Kohen is not a Levi. So, one individual person can most likely never keep the 613 mitzvot. Unless he's a king and a Kohen. So, what will be missing there? But I think it will be very tricky to keep all the mitzvot just because you are born an Israel, Levi, or a Kohen, or you're a king or not a king. So, like I said, the Chafetz Chaim lists mitzvot that is applicable to us today. And we said from the Rambam, there is 613 mitzvot. And I think this has altogether 247. I didn't now write it down when I made the presentation. The Rambam lists 248 positive commandments. But today only 77 apply until the temple is rebuilt with the coming of Mashiach. The Rambam listed 365 negative commandments, and currently only 194 apply. Obviously soon the temple should be rebuilt with the coming of Mashiach. He also lists 26 mitzvot which relate to Eretz Israel, living in the land of Israel. There is different laws that apply outside of Israel in our current time, without the Beit HaMikdash, without the temple, and living in Israel. In Israel, for example, you must take truma from fruit for you to be able to benefit from the fruit. It's a law for Israel. So in Israel, it's quite tricky to eat fruit because of that, because if someone offers you fruit from a tree that they have in their garden and they give you a fruit out of the kindness of their heart, you as a religious Jew cannot eat that fruit unless you know that that person is observant. And normally you ask the person, even if he's observant, if he took truma from the fruit, meaning that he separate to give to the Kohen. If he did not, you cannot eat it, and it is a procedure to take truma. And because there's so many Jews from Chutz La'aretz, from outside of Israel, that made Aliyah, many of them do not know the laws of Israel. So a lot of people stumble that way because we are so used to the laws outside of Israel. But the Chafetz Chaim does list it in his little book. So definitely a book worth getting, like a small. And I've learned this as well. But his book is very brief. So the Rambam is trying to keep it brief, but the Chofetz Chaim is keeping it even more brief. Now the next topic that we're going to cover in Mitzvot is a topic that the Rambam is bringing in his introduction to Sefer HaMitzvot, and that is the Rabbinic Mitzvot. So what's the difference between the 613 Mitzvot from the Torah, which the Rambam lists, and a Rabbinic Mitzvah? And I think a lot of people get confused with this point. So the 613 Mitzvot must come from a verse from the Torah, from the first 5 books, the books of Moshe, where God commands us to do something. Like God says, you shall bind it as a sign upon your arm, and it shall be tosafot, an ornament between your eyes. The Rambam counts it as 2 mitzvot. You shall bind something on your arm. We know it's tefillin from the oral law. And you shall bind something between your eyes, which we know is the head tefillin, which we know from the oral law. But the verse comes from the Torah. So these are part of the 613 mitzvot. A rabbinic commandment is something that was said by a prophet, or by the Sanhedrin, or by a Tana, which we discussed in last week's class, the oral law. I will pop the video above. The difference between a Tana and Amora, the Gionim, the Savoim, the Rishonim. We discussed that last week. But the Tana comes from the generation where the temple stood, and the Tanaim had shmicha, actual shmicha. So, and they made certain decrees. I'll give you very good examples. The best example is Tisha B'Av. So, we're going to do Tisha B'Av on Yom Rishon, on Sunday. And that is a rabbinical commandment. It does not appear in the Torah, obviously, because the Torah was given at Mount Sinai. And after the temple's destruction, we got the commandment from the rabbis, the Tanaim, to mourn the destruction of the temple every year on Tisha B'Av. Tisha is 9, Ba is in, Av is the month, on the 9th of Av. And we have certain laws around that. We must read Eicha, and so the brief halacha would be to mourn the destruction of the temple on Tisha B'Av. That will be the rabbinical commandment. To fast on Tisha B'Av is actually the headline. And then all what we need to do on Tisha B'Av is the halachot that the oral law brings for us. Tisha B'Av is covered in Tanit, in the Talmud, which is the Masechet dealing with sacrifices. There's also other rabbinic mitzvot. The other one is reading the Megillah on Purim, which was instituted by Mordechai, who was a prophet. So the Rambam lists the rabbinic mitzvot, but I can tell you that the rabbinic mitzvot is a hotly contested story with a few disagreements of what is a rabbinic mitzvah, what is not a rabbinic mitzvah. But I'll give you some of the main rabbinic mitzvot. There is not a lot of them. There's 11 of them, which I counted from his book, because he doesn't actually put it in a list. So the one he's putting is to light the Chanukah. So the festival of Chanukah is to light the Chanukiah, the 8 The 8 candles, I have one there above. Maybe you can see it there in the picture. So that's one that he lists, to light the Hanukkah candles. And he's listing it as a rabbinic mitzvah. To read the Megillah, like we just said on Purim. To recite 100 blessings a day. Maybe you've heard this before. So Jews say a lot of brachot. Before we drink something, we say a bracha. After we've drank something, we say a bracha. We say a blessing. When we come out of the bathroom, we say a blessing. Before we study Torah, we say a blessing. We say it in the morning. Because you should obviously learn Torah throughout the day. We say blessings the whole day long. And there's a rabbinic decree that you should say 100 blessings a day. Also on Shabbos, you're often short because you don't have the normal set prayers. So that's why some people say you should eat more, eat different type of things to make up for the blessings. The other one he lists is comforting the mourners. Now the next few he's not 100% agreeing with. He's taking it from the other source. And visiting the sick, burial of the dead, where most people list burial of the dead as a Torah mitzvah, and the Rambam does as well. Clothing the naked, he's now basically listing the machloket in the Rabbinic Mitzvot. One that is accepted is Hallel, reciting Hallel, which we do on Rosh Chodesh and on festivals. Also washing of the hands before eating or praying. And establishing an eruv. So on Shabbos, for you to carry from a private domain into a public domain, you need to establish an eruv, which is poles with a string. And then you're basically making everything a private domain, and you are allowed to carry within a private domain. So that is the rabbinic mitzvot. There's also people that say it's a rabbinic mitzvah to light the candles on Shabbos. Some people say it's connected with Hanukkah. Some people say it's connected with Shlom Bayit, which is a mitzvah. So that is basically the rabbinic mitzvot. We just mentioned the 11 that the Rambam mentions. The next thing we're going to talk about is what you have heard a lot about, and what many people believe is rabbinic mitzvot, which is fences for the Torah. Now the Torah actually tells us that we should make fences for the Torah, to make sure people don't break the actual Torah. So I'm trying to think of a good example here. So let's take something from Shabbos. So on Shabbos there's muksa, things that you cannot touch. Because if you were to touch them, you might come to violate Shabbos. So because the rabbis didn't want you to violate Shabbos, chas v'shalom, the Torah established fences, barriers, so that even if you were to touch something, which is muksha, which you should not, you wouldn't come to violate the actual Torah. Now some people say that muksa is actually part of the 39 restrictions, because it says in the Talmud 40 minus 1 and doesn't actually say 39. But I can tell you I finished Shabbos, Masechet Shabbos in the Talmud, and it is a hotly debated topic whether muksa is part of the is from the Torah or it's the Rabbanan. That is basically fences for the Torah. There's numerous examples for offenses of the Torah. It's basically so that you wouldn't come to sin. Let's take another example that now pops to mind. Is a very common example, which is yichud. Yichud is a word in Hebrew, and it basically means being together, beyachad, together. So yichud is being with a female, I'm a male, so if you're a female with a male, in a closed room, or even in a house with your door closed. That is forbidden by the rabbis. It's a fence. So it's not a mitzvah, it's a fence. Why is there such a fence? Because the rabbis were afraid that if you are alone with a female in the apartment or in a room with a closed door, then things might happen and you might transgress negative commandment from the Torah by being with this female. But it's a fence. It's not the oraita. So let's take it according to punishment. So we know the severity of transgressing a mitzvah by its punishment. How severe is this transgression? If you are getting lashes, then you have either committed a sin, derabanan, broke a fence. It's called in Torah law stripe for rebellion. And if it's a severe transgression, it's the death penalty. And if it's even more severe than that, then it is kares, which is cutting the soul from its creator, from God. So if you were in a yichud situation, so you and the girl were alone in the room or in the house, and the door was closed, if the temple stood and 2 witnesses saw you, then you will get 39 public lashes. This is the law of the Torah for rebelliousness. But if you were to transgress the Torah law, the punishment, depending on who the girl was, if she's arayot, if she's one of the people that's forbidden to you, it's death penalty and karet. But let's now not go too deep into that. Okay, so we have the Mitzvot Deoraita, the 613 Mitzvot from the Torah. Then we have the Rabbanan, which is a machloket, but the Rambam lists 11. Some places he lists 5, some places he lists 7. Then we have fences for the Torah, so that you wouldn't violate the Torah or the Rabbanan. And then we have minagim. A minag is a custom, meaning it is something that Jews do. That's the easiest way to explain it. It's something that Jews do, and it's something that Jews have been doing for a while. And obviously a minag starts somewhere. So, one of the most famous of these minagim is a woman in Nida, a woman that's having her time of the month. The Torah law is much more lenient than what we keep as Jews today. The reason is because women started after they had their monthly cycle, when there's nothing coming out anymore, then they start counting for 7 days. 7 clean days, then they go to the mikvah, they come up, and they are finished. The Torah law is, from when you start your monthly period, you count 7 days. So you can see the difference. The minag is a lot longer than the Torah law. But what do we keep today? We keep the minag. minhag becomes halacha. It becomes the same like halacha. And that's why often you'll hear people, they will say, but it's not from the Torah. Where is it written in the Torah? There's things that Jews accepted upon themselves, minhagim, customs, and this customs is like halacha, meaning you can't break tradition in Judaism. You can't make your own Judaism. You can't be a Karaite, basically. A Karaite is someone that doesn't believe in the oral law, only believes in the written law, and doesn't believe in minhagim, doesn't believe in customs. I'm going to give you a very easy example that you would all maybe know from Pesach. In Pesach, the festival of Passover, Ashkenazim don't, I'm an Ashkenazi Jew, I converted Ashkenazi, we do not eat rice. Now, according to the Torah, can I eat rice? Yes, I can 100% eat rice. Rice is not part of the 5 grains. 100% permitted for me in Pesach, according to the Torah, to eat rice. But there was a decree made that rice is forbidden for Ashkenazi Jews, because it was Ashkenazi Rabbi Posek that made this decree. And the reason he made this decree is because in the old days, rice and wheat was stored in the same place. Now, wild rice and wheat looks very similar. So the rabbis was afraid that the wheat and the rice will mix together, and then you will chas v'shalom eat wheat, cooked wheat, on Pesach, which is the death penalty, and a cut for the soul, karet, if you eat it, if you have it in your possession, if you can see it even in your possession. So the Ashkenazi rabbi decided that we don't want that, chas v'shalom. He made a decree that Ashkenazim cannot eat rice on Pesach because they are always stored together. Now, these days that they are not stored together, there's places that have wheat and places that have rice. However, there is some places that still have both. So there is still a doubt, a suffix. But let's say they're completely stored now separately. We know it's no longer 1,000 years ago. We now have a place for rice and we have a place for wheat, and they never mix. Even with that said, still an Ashkenazi Jew, even though we know what rice looks like now, because, I don't eat wild rice, so it's white, it's a different color. Even though I know that my rice is free of any wheat, there's no wheat in it, there's no 5 grains in my rice, I am forbidden to eat that rice because I am Ashkenazi and we keep our traditions. And I think there's a beauty in that. I think the main beauty is that we don't have that many divisions like in Christianity, because in Christianity, every day a new church forms because they don't agree with the other church. They basically break with tradition. And that was one of the big problems with the Reform movement, is they wanted to apply modern interpretations to the laws, and most Reform Jews today are no longer Jewish because they are so intermarried with the Goyim, with the nations, that many of them are no longer Jewish. So I think that's what many people don't realize, is the rabbis that made these decrees thought a little bit longer than what we are thinking today. So that's some of the most popular minhags. And a Sephardic Jew, for example, he can eat rice all day long because there was no decree made by the Sephardic posek. So he doesn't have that problem. So I think that's what we're going to cover for today. We'll do questions and answers. I'll give you a teaser of next week. Next week we're going to do the halachic process. We're going to do the 13 principles of Rabbi Ishmael, the Mishnah Torah, which we have covered a little bit, the Tur, which is very popular. Some of you might have heard of it, some might not have heard of it. The Shulchan Aruch, which most people know, and also the Ramah, which is the Ashkenazi posek commenting on the Shulchan Aruch, which will be very interesting to many of you, because there is a belief that everyone follows the Shulchan Aruch, which is partly true, but also not true. So that's just a little teaser. So let's get into the questions and answers. So Matt Tillman is just saying shalom, shalom. Matt Tillman is asking, is Tisha B'Av fast a 24-hour fast? So Tisha B'Av is a 25-hour fast. It starts before Shkia, and it's quite interesting this time around because it's in Shabbos. So there's numerous laws that you have to learn for that. But basically it starts an hour before Shabbos comes out, the fast starts. Chaya Lapin is just saying, she's thanking me for my knowledge and my time. It's my pleasure. Matt Tillman is asking, may we drink water during the fast? No. You cannot drink anything during the fast. You cannot eat during the fast. It is a fast like Yom Kippur. You cannot apply any oils. You cannot put any oils on your body. You can't wear leather shoes. You can't sit on a chair like the chair I'm sitting now. You can't even sit on a wooden chair. You got to sit on the ground. There is a leniency that you can put a cushion on the ground. That's some of the main things we do. We read Eicha on the night of Tisha B'Av, so when Tisha B'Av starts or after Shabbos. We do not greet people because we are mourning the destruction of the temple. And many people understand, why we're mourning for a temple, a building. It's because people see things like that, very physical. So we're not mourning just the fact that there's no physical building. We are mourning the fact that Hashem's presence isn't revealed in this world. At the time of the first temple, there was many miracles. And God's presence was in the world, revealed in the world. So obviously God doesn't need a building. God's presence fills the entire universe. So He doesn't need a little building to be. It's for us. It's not for God. So yeah, we don't drink anything. We don't eat anything. We don't greet people. We read Eicha on the night of Tisha B'Av. We sit on the floor. We don't wear leather shoes. We don't use any creams. There's a lot of leniencies for people that are pregnant, for women that are pregnant. They should consult their local Orthodox rabbi. And also, if you're ill and you've discussed it with your doctor, and your doctor told you not to fast, then it is forbidden for you to fast. Because the Torah says explicitly, these are the laws that you might live by them, and not chas v'shalom, die by them. And you should definitely consult with a rabbi if you have any medical condition, like diabetes, for example. I work in medical, and there's some people that's diabetic that can do it, and some people that can't do it. But you should definitely not put your life in danger for any mitzvah. That is not the Jewish tradition. Lisa Franny saying shalom, shalom. Adam Ben Yaakov is saying shalom, Shalom. Maripali is saying Shalom Achi, which means hello brother. Achi is brother. I'm going to just say his name. Hari is saying hello sir. And he's asking for my email ID. So I have said this in my previous videos. He's probably new to my channel. So if you need to contact me, it's definitely not by email, because I hardly read my work emails. You can contact me on YouTube, is the easiest way, on the comment section. And another way to contact me is on Facebook. My Facebook page name is The Jewish Convert. You can contact me on there as well. But I am not very good at replying to comments, because I work the whole day. I do work 8 to 10 hours a day. I have 2 chavrutas a day, so I learn 2 hours with people, with 2 individuals. And then I learn my own learning, which is another 2 hours a day. So I don't really have the time, to be very honest. I am actually thinking to do a question and answer. So instead of a syllabus class on conversion, to do a class on, not a class, to do a session of questions and answers. So I'll see what the poll says when people want to do this class, and then we will lock that time in, and we will keep it to that day going forward. And then maybe on the other popular day, because it seems to be Monday and Wednesday, so let's say people vote that Wednesday is going to be the day, then Wednesdays we are going to do the class, and then maybe on Monday we'll do a half an hour questions and answers. You can ask me then any question you like, and hopefully that way you'll get your question answered. I think that's the fastest way to do it. Okay, thanks everyone. There's not that many questions today because this class was actually unannounced. I just saw the poll and then I thought, let's not skip a week. So next week when we're going to do the halachic process, I want to wish everyone Shabbat Shalom, first of all. And on Shabbos you can eat meat and drink wine and go absolutely crazy. We are currently Ashkenazim, it's another minhag. We are currently in the 9 days. So in the 9 days, Ashkenazi Jews cannot eat meat or drink wine. So for me it's terrible because I mainly eat meat. And Sephardim only keep the restrictions of the 9 days in the week of Tisha B'Av. And because in this Tisha B'Av falls on a Sunday and the week only starts on a Sunday, which is Yom HaRishon, they have no restrictions. We have other restrictions as well as Ashkenazim in the 9 days, as well as in the 3 weeks. We can't shave, as you can see. We can't listen to music. We can't do laundry. We can't launder our clothes and wear it. So we have a few restrictions. But on Shabbos, Baruch Hashem, we can have meat. So I'm waiting in great anticipation for Shabbos evening meal. And I wish you all Shabbat Shalom. And I wish for those that are fasting a Tzom Kal, an easy fast. And remember the reason why we are fasting. We are fasting because we don't have Hashem's presence revealed in this world. That's why we are fasting. And that obviously goes together with the destruction of the temple. And we being exiled, we were kicked out of Israel into spread among the world. And only half of the Jews live in Israel. And not all of them have returned to us, to Eretz Israel. And B'Sarat Hashem, please God, they should all return to Eretz Israel. And we should use this day to to look within and work on ourselves and, see where we are going wrong. Because it says in every generation that the temple is not rebuilt, it's due to the sins of that generation. So the temple is not yet rebuilt. So it must be because that we still have a lot of work to do on ourselves. And a lot of people, especially online, unfortunately, like to point at other people's sins, where I think it's much more important to look at yourself and saying, what am I not doing good? Where can I improve? Maybe I need to speak better to people. Maybe I need to have more patience. Maybe I need to come on time for Shachris, Mincha, and Mariv, because I'm rarely on time, something I should work on, and various other things that I should work on. So I think we should use this time and reflect and see where we can improve. And if each one of us improves, then we will see a big improvement in the whole of Israel. And with that, we will see soon nowadays the coming of Mashiach and the rebuilding of the temple and God's presence being revealed in this world. So I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom and Tzom Kal.